We're joined today by the interim president and CEO of the National Restaurant Association, Marvin Irby. Marvin, thanks so much for making the time to join us. Although I'm guessing from the look of things, literally, that you're working from home like almost everybody else who can.
Yes, we are, and I thank you very much for your time, John. I truly appreciate it.
Well, as I said, this is, you don't have to be working in a restaurant to know that this is a crisis for all of these 15 million workers. It's a lot of people. Yeah. I want to let's talk through the implications, the reality, what's going on, and possibly if there are solutions or not. But just the implications. If you're a restaurant owner right now, if you're in the business, or you or your family, and let's at this moment look particularly on the smaller scale, what are you up against? I mean, what's your economic reality right now?
Well, let's start with the fact that 90% of all restaurants in this country have fewer than 50 employees. You mentioned some of the statistics at the start. There are 1 million restaurants in this country, employing, as you said, 15.6 million people. But many of these restaurants run on incredibly slim margins and slim cash flow. Since this crisis started, March 1, in the first 3 weeks of March, we have already lost more than 3 million jobs in this industry and $25 billion in revenue. We are anticipating, unfortunately, we're forecasting that by the end of April, 14% of restaurants will be closed permanently. That's 140,000 restaurants.
You're saying there would be no comeback for those restaurants?
There will be no comeback for those restaurants. The difficulty of reopening is so critical, and that's why so many of our efforts right now are to support the employees to keep these restaurants running during this crisis.
Can you explain? I'm sorry to jump in, but just to pick up on the point you said, the difficulty of reopening. What is that? What is that difficulty of reopening? If you don't know the business, you might think, okay, you lock the door in March, you unlock the door in July, you call everybody back, and the customers come back. You're saying it's way more complicated than that.
Well, the first thing that occurs is keeping your employees. There's 15.6 million employees. These are people with families, children, and they're looking to support their families. The CARES Act, which we worked with Congress and the White House, begins to address those needs. But one of the challenges that the restaurateurs face is that those employees have to take care of their families. They may choose to leave the industry, and it becomes more difficult to bring them back. Again, situations such as inventory, rent, utilities, these are all things that will have to be taken care of in order to reopen. And then finally, the coronavirus crisis itself. We're going to have to talk to our customers about coming back. During this crisis, many of our restaurants have tried very much to convert from dine-in to carry-out and delivery. But only 54% have been able to do that. Many physically are unable to make that change. And the closing of the dining rooms and the social distancing measures have crippled many of the restaurants in our country.
What do you think is the conversation with the customers on that day that we're all looking forward to when this is over and it's come back?
It's welcome back. Yeah. We're safe. Our U.S. restaurants have some of the highest safety standards in the world, frankly. COVID-19 is not a foodborne illness. We here at the association are providing free training right now. We've actually created a COVID-19 safety training that we're offering for free to all of the restaurants across the country. So what we would say is, welcome back. We're here to serve you as we always have been.
We've been talking a little bit now about the smaller operator, but there are big chains like Cheesecake Factory and Subway have already been waving flags of distress. Both of those companies have announced not only that they're furloughing workers, but that they're not going to pay their rent, that they can't pay their rent. And so that's a ripple effect for the landlords of the places where they have their establishments located. But the question I'm wondering about is what's the impact of these companies saying that they won't pay their rent. Do we see them being evicted, which would be, again, another obstacle to them coming back?
Well, I don't know if we see them being evicted, but what I can tell you about the impact is that the restaurant industry in total generates about $2.5 trillion of value throughout the U.S. economy and employs over 21 million jobs in the supply chain. The longer this crisis goes on, the more you're going to hear about the larger, more well-known brands that have these issues as well. And what we're doing as an association is working very closely right now with the White House and Congress on what will be the next phase of support for this industry.
We have some questions coming in from people who are watching. This one is from Connor Scahill, who asks, how are we supposed to mitigate the employee and owner risk against infections and potential loss in fields where social distancing is impossible? So that's got to be a central question in the restaurant industry. I mean, even in the delivery side of things, you're still going to be having contact with your fellow workers. Kitchens are closed spaces. Then you're going to have people coming and going through the front door. How much is the industry thinking about that risk, and what can be done for it?
We have provided free training to all restaurants that are open in carry out and delivery on the practices that are necessary to acknowledge both the social distancing and the safety measures that the CDC has required during this crisis. Again, restaurants have always followed the most secure safety standards in the world here in the U.S. And it has actually been one of our #1 priorities. At the association, we have done seminars continually over the last month, highlighting food safety in all of our restaurants. Please know that our restaurants are committed to the safety of our employees and our customers. And this has truly been a priority.
But can you give a specific, like what do you do about the fact that you're going to have, 2 cooks, 4 feet away from each other because that's what the space allows? Is there a solution to that?
Well, actually, you have fewer cooks. You may have just 1 cook. And so as a result, the throughput might be slower. But those are the adjustments that are being made. You're running in shifts. You're not going to have those cooks that close to each other in this situation. Each one of the restaurants will have to, given the physical limitations and their design, do what's necessary. This question, however, is one of the reasons why you're seeing so many restaurants close as opposed to being able to stay open. They physically cannot meet some of these standards.
So they have no option, really, if they want to be
healthy. They have no option. Exactly.
With the median hourly wage in the restaurant industry is around $10. So you've got employees now for $10 an hour taking, even with these measures, a serious risk. Is there any case to be made for upping their pay, for providing them with hazard pay, literally, for what they're doing, the same way that first responders might get hazard pay for doing their jobs?
Well, many of our restaurateurs are doing what they can to support their employees. But again, you're also looking at a situation that because of social distancing and because of the restrictions that are being placed on, the customers aren't able to come to the restaurants. The revenues are being cut significantly. And so that, again, is one of the reasons why it has proven very difficult for this industry in particular to work through this crisis.
So I have another question that I think goes to that. Marsha is on Facebook and asks, what are the creative ways that we can help sustain small businesses and restaurants right now?
Well, #1, if your restaurant is supporting carry out and delivery, please go. These employees need you at this point. These are our employees. These are our friends. 1 out of 10 people in this country work in the restaurant industry. So I'd ask you to support carry out, delivery, gift cards throughout this time. Our restaurants are here to serve you. We're a major part of the food chain, and we look forward to having the opportunity to serve you in total once we're on the other side of this crisis.
Talk to me about the solution that the administration announced this week and supposed to go into operation today. It's a small business loan program, somewhere between $300 and $400 billion to provide relief. Are you satisfied with that program? How does it actually function?
Well, first of all, the CARES Act. We think it is a great first step by the administration. We appreciate the size and the boldness of it. There's really three pieces to the program. It provides immediate access to capital through a loan that any business under 500 employees can apply for. This loan is up to 250% of salaries during the prior year. It's a 10-week loan, and it covers salaries, rent, and utilities. As long as this loan is used for those items, salary, rent, and utilities, it is forgiven. This provides immediate liquidity for the restaurants and allows them to stay open. Additionally, there's other short and midterm loans as well, but that's the core. And then finally, there's tax credits and tax incentives that will help stimulate the economy once we reopen our doors.
So is this loan as available to, say, a major restaurant chain as it is to Joe's Diner down the street?
Well, keep in mind, when you mention major restaurant chains, let's use McDonald's as an example. McDonald's is made up of a number of small restaurateurs. A franchisee, for example, will own 1, 2, 3 McDonald's. Under this act, if you have less than 500 individuals, you can qualify for this loan.
Okay. Another question. This goes back to something you said earlier. George Quintanilla is asking, can you provide a little bit more information about the free training on issues for how to reopen, and especially where do they go to find this training?
ServeSafe.com, which is the #1 provider of food safety training in the country. You can go to ServeSafe.com, and you'll see that we have 2 brand new COVID-19 courses on how do you operate your restaurant in this environment. It is free training. It'll be free throughout this crisis. And you can just go to our website, ServeSafe.com.
You know, it's a known fact that small businesses are always a risky undertaking. The figure is something like restaurants have a 60% failure rate in their first year. So it's always risky. Now, given this experience, do you think, let's put aside the people who are in the business and trying to decide what to do, but do you think, going down 4 to 5 years, that this has put a chill on restaurant development for some time? Or is it, again, if we return to something that feels like normal, does normal happen fast?
Well, 8 weeks ago, we did a study, and it said that 81% of Americans preferred to go to their restaurants than to cook at home. I happen to believe that when we get to the other side of this, we're going to want to celebrate. We're going to want to convene. And the places where we've convened and celebrated for years have been our restaurants. And so when we get to the other side of this, I believe there will be restaurants there waiting for our customers to return.
The people who are, you mentioned earlier that during closures, the staff may go find other work. Where will they find other work in this situation? What is out there for an individual who's been working, as a waiter, waitress, et cetera, busboy, can't make a living there, needs to find something else? What else out there is there, really?
Well, I'll be honest, John, I can't really speak to that right now because we're watching every industry get affected by this. And that's why our #1 priority has been to take care of the employees in the industry. That's why the CARES Act is structured the way it is. And so our #1 goal is to support our employees, our families, to keep them in the industry so that they'll be available when we're able to open our doors again.
So you're in the cautious optimism department, it sounds like.
Yes.
All right. Marvin Irby, I want to thank you so much for joining us. You really gave us a look into the industry that I think opened a lot of people's eyes on what the challenges are, other than seeing those shuttered doors up and down our streets. Thanks so much for joining us, and good luck to you. Please
Thank you very much for your time. Stay safe.